Have you ever been in the presence of people who make you feel alone? It can be tough to challenge the assumptions others make about us, but it's essential for true belonging.
In this video, I'm joined by a very special guest to share some examples of overcoming stereotypes. Stick around. A stereotype is a widely held and simplified idea or belief of a particular group of people, based on the membership in that group. They can form based on someone's race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, age, or any other characteristic that distinguishes a member of a group. They can be super harmful because it could lead to discrimination, prejudice, unfair treatment of any individual who doesn't fit into the perceived stereotype. People stereotype for a wide variety of reasons, including but not limited to cognitive efficiency, where our brains make shortcuts to exert less mental effort, socialization, where one's family, culture, media, and other social influences can deeply ingrain automatic thoughts into the mind, and fear or insecurity, where people make assumptions to try to predict behavior and feel comfortable about the unknown. Joining me today to talk about stereotypes is a great friend of mine, Kimiko Davis. Kimiko is the founder and head consultant of Kanji Consulting, an organization structured to help companies implement leading psychological practices at work to improve productivity, raise their bottom lines, and unlock human potential. She received her Master of Science degree in Industrial Organizational Psychology from Vanguard University, and she's finishing her PhD program in Business Psychology at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. She's worked in a wide variety of analyst and research roles to help further the field, and she also serves as an adjunct professor to mentor students on business psychology. She's one of the busiest people I know, but she still makes time to live an adventurous and spontaneous life where she can. This involves things like modeling, working out, and having plenty of fun times with loved ones. She was gracious enough to come onto the show and talk to us about navigating this complex psychological concept.
Hey guys, it is so great to be here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for Jeff for having me on this amazing channel that you've created. Today I'll be talking about some experiences that I faced and also sharing inspiration with you guys. So let's get into some questions on overcoming stereotypes.
What was your upbringing like?
Being a young woman who is half white and half Japanese has had its set of challenges for me. So growing up, I was raised in a household that was traditionally American with bits of Japanese. That was always very confusing to me because I'm half and half. So you'd expect there to be a half white side and a half Japanese side. But for me, it was more traditional. And I had always wondered why there weren't more Japanese traditions brought into the household. And I found out that my grandmother was actually in an internment camp. And because of that, she didn't teach my mother any traditions because she would rather her fit in to society. And also they didn't have a lot of money because everything was taken from them during those internment camps. So growing up, I wasn't taught those things. I was kind of taught to just fit in to the white society I was in. But I always remembered the small moments of the Japanese culture. I remember going to New Year's. I remember eating noodles with friends and learning how to use chopsticks. I remember going to picnics with my family where we'd go to the Buddhist temple before and then all eat together after. So both of those things have developed me into who I am. I'm not just white and I'm not just Japanese. I'm both of those things combined. Also growing up, there were people that would make fun of me for the way that I looked. Because I was Asian, they picked on things like my eyes. They would assume I was a bad driver. People thought I would be good at math because I was Asian. And a lot of these things hurt my identity. I thought, okay, that's just half of me. Why does that Japanese half have to be so negative? And so from that, I actually took it and challenged myself more. I stepped into leadership positions where I could be a voice for people that felt like they didn't have that, to have a leader that looked like me. I also participated in volunteer events, any way that I could give back to show people you don't have to be who society tells you to be. You can be whoever you are. Also, growing up, both my father and my mother worked, which at that time, you see a lot of fathers working and then mothers staying at home with the kids. And not only did my mom work full time, she also went back to school. And so she's always modeled for me. Just because you're a female doesn't mean people can tell you that you can't do something. If you set your mind to it, if you have the drive and determination, you will accomplish what you set out to do. My biggest advice would be to take time to reflect on your upbringing and your culture. Ask your parents questions. Ask people that know your culture questions about, where does this come from? How does this shape me? And then from there, I promise you that you will gain the confidence in your culture that I wish that I had. There's this term in psychology called stereotype threat. And basically what it means is when somebody falls victim to other people's perception of their race, gender, ethnicity, etc. I had never heard about this term until I actually experienced it. And I wish that I could go back and tell my younger self, don't listen to these stereotypes. Don't listen to these boxes that people put you in. Be who you are and embrace all of these things. Growing up, I was a victim to stereotypes and prejudice actions. And to be honest, I probably participated in it too because I didn't know a lot about it. But because of that, it forced me to dive deeper into understanding more about myself and my culture, and also understanding others and their culture. And because of that, I fell into psychology.
Tell us how you got into psychology.
So growing up, I always observed other people's behaviors because I felt like I had to fit into one of the boxes that somebody put me in. And while observing behavior, I also watched my sister growing up, who was the closest person that looked like me. She was also a female, half Asian, so she was always my role model growing up. I remember she studied psychology in college. I remember laying on the couch and her reading textbooks and telling me about studies and theories, and I just became fascinated with psychology. So from there, I declared my major for undergrad as psychology. And in the program, I started learning about stereotyping and prejudice and microaggressions. And these things that I was reading, I got very emotional about because they're things that I had experienced, but I was never able to put a name to what was happening to me. And from there, after learning about all of these names for things, understanding my emotions of how I reacted to those things, I just wanted to help others, one, understand what those were, and two, to get people help that they needed. Psychology gave me a voice and a language that I didn't have before. It also gave me the tools and skills to be able to work on myself. And in turn, I was inspired to want to help others as well. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self to not believe that my career had to be based on my ethnicity or any kind of stereotype or box that somebody put me in. I wish I told myself to always follow my passion because that path would lead me to exactly where I would be today.
What were the biggest barriers you faced when trying to succeed?
Studying psychology gave me tools and knowledge to deal with heavy stereotyping and prejudice, but I wasn't immune to it. Actually, the first stereotype I faced was my age. Growing up, people would always make remarks about my age. They would always say, "You look a lot younger than you actually are." And they would also add, "Well, don't worry, when you're older, you'll be thankful for that." And although I always took it as a joke, there were instances where people looking down on me or talking down to me for my age really hurt my feelings. One example that comes to mind is I walked into an interview once and the woman looked at me confused. And I didn't really understand why she looked at me like that, but as we went through the interview process, I could tell that she was asking me questions and talking down to me and prying to get my age. She didn't believe that I could be qualified for this, even though I had the experience. And ultimately, I didn't get the job. The next barrier I constantly face is being a female in leadership. In college, a friend and I ran for student government president and vice president and were elected by the student body. We were filled with congratulations, and we were actually told that we were the first two females to win, let alone ever run. I was so shocked by this because I thought there had to be females in the past that had run before. But when thinking about it, I reflected on how society doesn't allow or encourage females to pursue leadership positions. Another issue I constantly deal with involves mentorship. When I started my consulting company, I was searching for mentors because I wanted people to pour into me so that I didn't make mistakes at the beginning. However, I soon learned that other consultants didn't want to share advice as I was seen as a competitor to them. So while I was starting a company at a young age, full of motivation, full of passion, I couldn't find anybody that wanted to help me or be a mentor to me. These barriers and stereotypes have put unrealistic expectations on myself. It's put a lot of pressure on me to fulfill some sort of image that other people believe me to be. Because of this, the advice that I would give is to always give people grace, because you never know where they're at on their journey, but also don't feed into those stereotypes, and also stay strong in knowing who you are and what your skills are, because that will show.
Who inspired you to break all the glass ceilings that you constantly face?
Growing up, I always watched Disney Channel, and I remember the first time that I saw a woman in leadership, and that is Mulan. And I was always so inspired by her because she broke all the social norms. She did exactly what she wanted to. She had goals, she set out, and she did it with confidence. And when I was reflecting on this, I also thought about, well, who is this in real life? It's great that this is a character from a Disney movie, but who is my inspiration in real life? And I thought about my mother. She showed me that race and gender can never stop you from pursuing your goals. My mom worked full time, went to school, was raising me, was a wife, and she was doing it all. She was breaking stereotypes that I had learned my whole life. And I thought to myself, where is the inspirational leader that's a woman that looks like me? Yes, I've seen her on Disney, but where is she in real life? And little did I know she was right in front of me. When people ask me the question, where do I find inspiration from? I tell them to look for it in others. Keep your mind open, read a lot, have hobbies, talk to people, because inspiration comes from other people. It comes from the stories that you hear, the experiences you go through. All of those things combined can inspire you, but you just have to be open to listening.
What advice would you give to others on overcoming stereotypes?
My first piece of advice would be to understand who you are. So when people ask, who are you? Or tell me something about yourself, how do you usually reply? For me, I experienced this when I walked into a job and I had a woman say, hello, how are you? I said, good. She said, what's your name? I said, hi, I'm Katie Davis. And she looked at me in the eye and she said, you say your name as if you're not proud of who you are. And this really struck me because I thought I had done all of this work to overcome my stereotypes and figure out who I was. But instead, this woman was bringing out all my insecurities. I dove deeper into trying to understand why this was. When I thought about it, I was named Catherine at birth. And then I was nicknamed Katie by friends. And so I was still trying to fit this expectation of who people wanted me to be. So instead, I started going by my middle name, which is Kimiko. And it shows my Japanese roots. And also my last name, Davis, shows my white roots. And I feel more confident in who I am now just by changing my name. So now when people ask me, what's your name? I proudly say, Kimiko. Another thing that really helped me was reading. But from my studies, I soon found that there's more out there on how to not stereotype versus what to do if you've been stereotyped against. For this reason, I found Brené Brown, who speaks about vulnerability and courage. And what I've learned from her is that we have to have the courage to be vulnerable with people, to share our stories and our experiences, so that maybe others can relate and so that we can dive deeper into understanding why these things happened and what we can do about them. Lastly, embrace your individuality and culture. Make sure that you stay curious. It's important to understand your upbringing and also follow your passions in life. And like I've mentioned in this video, be true to who you are, because who you are is who you're made to be.
As Kimiko mentioned, one of the big problems with stereotypes is not necessarily that they're always untrue, but that they're incomplete. Other people make one story become the only story. Stereotypes start to lose their power when the individual is found to be more complex than the stereotype suggests. When we learn that individuals don't fit the group stereotype, then it begins to fall apart. Even though Kimiko continues to struggle with others putting her into these stereotypical buckets, she continues to push through and navigate the world around her utilizing her knowledge in psychology. She researches feverishly, remains passionate with her craft, stays confident, and sets strong yet clear boundaries with others. She shares her story and asks the hard questions while offering immense value from the skills that she's acquired and the unique personality that she's shaped over the years. The ways in which Kimiko overcomes stereotypes is not only deeply inspiring, but it's helping to change future generations of young women and all those who have been stereotyped. Let me know in the comments below about what resonated the most with you on what Kimiko shared today. So with all that being said, I do have one final question that I want to ask every single guest that comes onto the show. What gives you the greatest fulfillment in life?
I have been gifted with skills and passions that have made me unbreakable. I have also been able to defy stereotypes. I've been able to grow who I am and gain confidence in that. And by doing that, I've been able to help others. And by helping others and encouraging them, that's what gives me the greatest fulfillment in life.
So you heard it from the woman herself. I'm so proud to call Kimiko a good friend and a colleague. It's people like her that continue to help light the flame within me to lift others up. She continues to work hard to make psychology make sense for the masses.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in and one, being curious about this, and two, watching the video. I really appreciated that Jeff has given me a platform to be able to share my experiences, and I hope that you're able to resonate with this or take some tips away with you. So thank you again, Jeff, for having me here. I really appreciate it. Go check out his other videos because they're all wonderful. He really does make psychology make sense. And also go out into the world and don't be afraid to share your story.
Continue to remain curious and passionate. Follow all the tips that Kimiko shared today and know that it isn't easy, but it's completely possible. Treat yourself with grace and lean into whoever it is that you are truly meant to be. If you're interested in other topics in psychology, be sure to check out my last video on emotional intelligence. So for all things psychology to help you think, feel, and perform better, stay tuned right here on Psychology of Living.